How's it going, everyone? This is Draoi with another damn level. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Guardian DPS build built around the meditation skills. This is a burst build that's very good at singling out individual targets and kind of locking them into an arena and staying up with them for ones like thieves, rangers, some other high mobility classes. This is really good for locking those classes down and singling them out. The pro to this build is, again, burst damage, a lot of lockdown, some battlefield control. The downside is you really don't have a lot of HP, and your sustainability isn't that high. You are a burst DPS. With that being said, you do have a fair amount of disengage, ways to get out of specific scenarios, and some functionality skills to help you reposition on the battlefield and get yourself out of those tight lockdowns, especially if you end up in, like, Whirling Blade or something like that, where you can't take that much damage, because again, you don't have that much health. So we're going to go over traits, and we are going to go over the gear that we use in this build, and then we're going to go over rotations. This is the new video format, the first video in this format, where everything's all in one video. It won't be split up. Everything for the build will be inside this video. So we're going to dive into traits. This build uses 60602, so that is 6 in Zeal, 6 in Valor, and 2 in Virtues. So we're going to dive in, go over the traits, and then we'll move on to gear. So first is Zeal, and the first trait we take here is Fiery Wrath. This is straight up damage, 10% increased damage to burning foes. This build depends on burning to deal most of its damage, both as a condition and it will add a percentage of the damage that we do with our weapon skills if they are burning. So most of these traits are straight up damage. Second is Binding Jeopardy. This is whenever you immobilize a foe, it applies 5 stacks of vulnerability, so that's 5% more damage. The reason for this is the particular weapon set that I chose for this build is actually a hammer, a one-handed sword, and a torch. Now, this is a build that branches off the meta build that you'll find on, like, a lot of the sites for the meditation DPS, which uses a scepter, a focus, and a greatsword. But I switched it up because that kind of got boring for me, and I didn't find myself performing very well with it, whether it be due to my own playstyle or what have you. So I switched it up. And this allows you to initiate from a distance with our hammer and apply 5 stacks of vulnerability so we can deal more damage with that initial strike, because again, this is a burst build. Next is Kindled Zeal. Gain condition damage based on your power. Again, really straightforward. With the gear that we've taken, the carry-on gear, which we'll take a look at, we gain a fair amount of power and condition damage, and this just ups the damage that the burning that we apply does. So again, straight up damage. Next is Valor. We take Meditation Mastery because we want to be able to use all of our meditations as much as possible. And this will give us a 20% recharge reduction for almost our entire skill bar, including our elite. And I like this because most elites for a majority of the classes don't fall under a particular category, which I find quite annoying. Whereas in this particular case, it does. So I really, really like it. Next is the Focused Mind trait. Meditations grant Fury. This will give us an additional 20% critical chance for 4.5 seconds. And this will come into play with some of the sigils and some of the gear that we have, which ties into burning. We'll see that when we go over gear. Again, straightforward, more chance for damage. It's really all we're after. Last in Valor is Monk's Focus. Using a meditation skill heals you. We don't have a whole lot of healing power in this particular build, but this is your key sustain. Every time you use a meditation skill, it will heal you, and you'll be able to use them reasonably often. The cooldowns are somewhat high, like your lowest cooldown is 36 seconds for Judge's Intervention. But paired with your hero skill, that should give you a fair amount of sustain. Last is the 2 in Virtues, and we take Unscathed Contender. we deal more damage while we're under the effects of Aegis, and the damage increase is actually pretty significant. It's 20%, which is pretty intense, actually. It works really well. And this is for our initiation, that first big strike that we wanna lay down when we know who we want to go after, we want to lock him down, and we want to take him out really quickly. The Aegis is something we'll have when that strike occurs, and so that 20% increased damage will be really nice. So that's it for traits. Again, it's pretty much all straight damage, and you'll see how some of this ties in when we go over gear. Which, swap over and take a look at how that works. So for gear, I'm running all carry-on gear, which is power, vitality, and condition damage, primarily condition damage. That is literally what every piece of gear that I have on here works, and I find it works quite well. It's just enough health to get out when you need to, but it's certainly quite a lot of damage with the burning, and the hammer hits pretty hard, and it gives you a lot of disable to prevent channeling, and it gives you a lot of lockdown. Yeah, that's really it. Like, it's all carry-on gear. The ruins, however, are the superior rune of the Flame Legion, which I get left out a lot, but it works, in my opinion, very well for this build. I've had a lot of success using this. And it gives us 175 power, so it makes us hit just a little harder, but it increases our burning duration by 10%, and then a 25% chance to cause burning for 1 second whenever we're hit every 10 seconds. So again, more burning, and if they're burning, we do more damage to them. And then the last part, we get a grand total of 30% burning duration plus 7% damage against burning foes again. So if they're burning, we get 17% more damage, and then the burning lasts for 30% more, which means it's more damage from our conditions. I've been pretty happy with this. I really enjoy the amount of damage that comes out of it. The trick is knowing when to disengage from a fight, knowing that you may not win. You know, if all your meditations are off cooldown or something like that, it's generally not good to stay in that fight. For weapons, again, carry on. The sigils are what help bring everything together with those traits, like the fury and everything like that that we looked at inside the traits. The sigils is what really help it. So we have a two-handed hammer, and then we have a one-handed sword and a torch. So the sigils for the sword and the torch are plus 10% condition duration, which will add more duration to our burning, which we're always looking for. Because as long as they're burning, we're doing more damage to them, and they're taking damage from the condition itself. And since we stacked condition damage on our gear, that's quite a bit of damage. That hurts quite a lot. And we want to ensure that it affects our torch skills. And our torch has the superior sigil of smoldering, which increases the burning duration by another 20%. So we get a very, very long duration on those burning effects. If they let it sit there, it'll deal immense amounts of damage if they're not paying attention to it. And we have a lot of ways of applying burning to make sure it's always up. Really, there shouldn't ever be a time in which the person you're singling out shouldn't be on fire due to your torch skills and the sigils that are on the hammer. So what's on the hammer is the superior sigil of fire. 50% chance on a critical hit. That's where that fury comes in, by the way. To trigger a flame blast in the area with a 240 radius. Now, that causes burning, and that can happen every 5 seconds. So that becomes really, really critical with how things work in this build to ensure they're always burning. The second sigil will ensure once you swap to the hammer, you have at least 3 hits to trigger that sigil of fire. Is we take the superior sigil of intelligence, which when you swap to the weapon that it has, it's on, the next 3 attacks while using that weapon have a 100% critical chance. and that can happen every 9 seconds, but that's not extremely pertinent because the weapon cooldown for this build is longer than that. So what this means is when you switch to your hammer, you get 3 guaranteed critical hits, and there's a 50% chance on every one of those hits that it will trigger a flame blast, and catch everything on fire in the area, which again will either reset your stack or reapply it, depending if they've removed it, which will increase the damage that you do while hitting them by 17%, thanks to our trait and thanks to our ruin. So that's a lot of information. That is the traits and gear that go into this particular build. Again, this is a burst build, so we want to single someone out. That one ranger that keeps nailing everyone, or that particular thief, we don't want to let them get away. This build is set to keep up with those particular types of characters. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the rotation for this particular build. And again, the goal is to lock down a single individual. You're kind of an assassin with this particular build. We have a lot of initiation that can occur with this because you have your blink strike, or your flashing blade, sorry, to blink to a target like that. And then we also have the judge's intervention, which also ports us to a particular target and sets them on fire. Really what we want to do is you want to try to initiate with your sword and your torch, and you want to initiate with judge's intervention. The reason for this is because A, it'll cause your target to burn before you hit them, which will increase the damage that you do by 17%. On top of that, it will give you 4.5 seconds of fury. And now this can trigger some of our other effects that we have going on in our build with our traits and our sigils. So what I tend to do is I'll initiate with Judge's Intervention, which will give me the burning. Then I will throw down a Cleansing Flame, because we'll be doing 17% more damage each tick that Cleansing Flame, each tick that it does damage, which is 9. And that's actually a significant amount of damage. Then I will... You can either Zealot's Defense, or you can, if they're trying to get away, like a thief will use their short bow to teleport away, you will use a Flashing Blade to get back into range. So those are your 2 chase down skills are the Judge's Intervention and the Flashing Blade. So if they're trying to get away, you want to use Flashing Blade, because that will blind them, which means when they try to use their disengage skills to hit you, slow you down or whatever, it'll miss, which is fantastic. Or if they're in range, but say like a thief with dual pistols is trying to rotate around you and use their volley, you can use Zealot's Defense and it will put up a shield in front of you, and it will block the projectiles from that volley. And that looks like this. So it puts a shield up in front of you and throws some projectiles out, and those projectiles, you get 8 of them, so your chance to critically hit is really quite nice. So after you've made the determination whether you need to get to them and don't let them get away, or if they're trying to retaliate with projectiles, and you've pulled one of those skills off, then you want to use Zealot's Flame, because at that point you should still be near them with the flashing blade, or they're trying to rotate around you, something like that. Then you want to go with Zealot's Flame. Now what Zealot's Flame does is you basically set yourself on fire, and as long as you're around people, you'll apply a stack of burning, which again, that's what this build is all about. We want that burning. So you'll catch yourself on fire, you go stand next to someone, you'll see it will periodically set them on fire, which is what we want. After you've done that, you can switch to hammer. So you've set yourself on fire, you've caught up with them, so what we want to do is a ring of warding. And the reason for this is it will keep them in this area. They can't leave this area that you lay down right here, which it doesn't seem like it lasts very long, 5 seconds. but that 5 seconds they can't get away from you. They don't have a choice but to stand next to you while you've caught yourself on fire, while you're using this hammer. So now you've initiated, you've locked them down, you've hopefully exhausted one of their disengaged skills, and now they're trapped in a circle with you. Once you lay down a ring of warding, we want to take advantage of the 5 seconds where they can't maneuver away from you, hopefully. So it's a combo field light, the ring of warding, which means if you do a mighty blow, you'll get a stack of retaliation, which again only lasts for 2 seconds, but for a thief, that's actually quite a few hits depending on the skill set they're using, like double daggers. That's a fair amount of damage that they can deal to them back to themselves by dealing damage to you. So we go Ring of Warding, and then we go Mighty Blow, and from there, most of the time your ring will have dissipated, which means you can do a couple different things. If they're trying, like if they blink away because their CDs are down, we want to use the Zealot's Embrace, because it's a range. It has a pretty significant range, and it's a lockdown, which means they can't move. It's immobilized. Plus, it's another 5 stacks of vulnerability. Or if you have them pinned, or you have teammates that are behind them, you can use Banish, which is a disable. Like, it pushes them back and away from you. When you do that, you can reinitiate with Judge's intervention. Sorry. Or you can come back to the Sword Torch combo and reinitiate with Flashing Blade and start this entire rotation over again. So that's it for this build. Like, the offensive of this build is you want to try to single out an individual, lock them down, and burst them down as much as possible. So we come in here. It's actually a fair amount of damage, so if we go Judge's Intervention, use the blade, in this particular scenario, use that, and then you light yourself on fire, get our ring, I fucked it up, and I killed the golem. Whoops. So, we're going to do that again since I fucked it up. Wait for the CDs to come off cooldown. Trying to talk and do this rotation for some reason is particularly difficult for me, whether it be due to my own ineptitude or what, but for some reason I have a severe problem while trying to do it. So again, Judge's Intervention, in the flames, and then you need to make the determination between Zealot's Defense and Flashing Blade, and then you want to catch yourself on fire. There we go. Then we want to get that retaliation from the combo field. Then you can do the combination of your lockdowns there, and from here you can switch back and Flashing Blade. And since you've already initiated, your Judge's Intervention will still be on cooldown, but by the time you come around the second time, it'll be off cooldown, which means you can do that whole rotation all over again. So you can see that, like, our lockdowns are almost off cooldown already. You can keep someone locked down away from an objective or a teammate pretty consistently and become a severe pain in the ass. So this isn't the highest DPS build that there is, especially for Guardian, but it's definitely very versatile. And the way that works is because we're gonna cover how to disengage from a fight. You have a couple disengage skills, and this will cover the kind of the rest of our skill bar here. So one of your disengage skills is the same as your lockdown skill, the Ring of Warding. If you find a decent bottleneck, you can actually Ring of Warding, which will keep them away from you, and you can run out and get away pretty easily. But because it has a reasonably long cooldown, sometimes that's not always an option. that is where a couple of our other skills come into play. So we have Contemplation of Purity. This is a meditation skill like all the other skills, but it's also a stun break. So if you get locked down, you know, knock up, I believe it is, or knock back, you can use this to get out of it. And it will heal you for a little bit, and it will give you a little bit of fury. So you can do this to stay in a fight or to get out. One thing to notice is Judge's Intervention is also a stun break, so you can also use that. But what Contemplation of Purity does is it converts the conditions that you currently have into boons. And that's what it's mainly there for. It'll heal you a little bit, and then if you're versus like a conditioned NG, if you can wait out just a little bit longer for them to get their full stack of conditions on you, you can immediately turn all of those into boons, which is phenomenal, especially in a one-on-one, because now all of their CDs for all the important conditions they need have just been nullified. Last is Merciful Intervention. So this is a pure disengage skill that works best if you're with a team, because what it does is it's an AoE cast, like you can see here. And what it does is, if an ally is inside of this AoE, you will teleport to them, and you'll heal them and yourself up to 5 targets around that person. So it's a pure disengage. If for nothing else, if there isn't a teammate, you can always cast it on yourself, or cast it in the corner. It won't do anything, but you'll still get the healing and the fury from it. It has a reasonably long cooldown, which I don't necessarily care for, but it's a great disengage for like the 5v5 PvP matches that you can tend to go into. It works really well in World v World, because it's really easy to find an ally to teleport to. So it can be very situational, but it can also save your life. This can be traded out for some other skills, which we'll take a look at. But it's decent. I like using it. The heal is at least okay. It could certainly be worse, but it can be traded out for a couple other things. Last is Shelter. While not necessarily a disengage skill, the reason I use Shelter is because it blocks attacks while you're healing. 2 seconds of block is enough to negate like a thief's pistol volley. Quick shot, I don't remember what it's called. When they dual wield pistols. So you can negate a vast amount of damage if you time it just right, and it only has a 30-second cooldown, which could be shorter, but it's also not bad, especially if you take in consideration that every skill on your skill bar heals you. Your ultimate disengage or your ultimate engage, either or, is your ult. Lengthy cooldown, as one might expect, but it's also a meditation, so it heals you and it gives you fury, but it makes you invulnerable to everything for 2 seconds. Which again doesn't sound very long, but if you time it just right, like if you pour it in with Judge's Intervention and everyone piles on top of you and you pop Renewed Focus, you can deny them almost an entire team of their opening rotation, which can be devastating because that's a lot of cooldowns that they now have to wait for. And that's where the nuance of this build comes in, is like if you're squishy, but you have the ability to completely bone over an enemy team if you can get them all to waste their opening rotations on you. So it's a lot of information. Again, Merciful Intervention, it can be replaced with a couple other things. If you feel it doesn't necessarily do its job, you can replace it with Shelter, which is a small bubble around you where enemies can't come in, and you can't be hit by projectiles. It's a consecration skill, so you don't really get any benefit from it, but it can be very useful for locking down individual points or bunkering a little more. But this is not a bunker build. This is a straight up single someone out and burn them down. That's all this build is. Couple notes. You do want to try to use your Virtue of Justice as much as possible, because it will guarantee burning for quite a while on whoever you hit, and it will give you 3 stacks of might. The other virtues definitely can be used, but the one you want to try to use the most is Virtue of Justice for that DPS. And remember that first hit, as long as you have Aegis, will do 20% more damage until you get hit, basically. So if you can lock someone down, you pour it in, and you lock someone down, and they don't hit you, you'll be doing more damage the less you can be hit. So if you can pour it in, and then dodge their initial attack, and then use flames, you'll get more damage out of these flames. So that is it. That is pretty much the entire build that I use for Guardian. Again, there's some higher DPS ones that you can find for sure. I just found them a little boring, and I wanted to try something new, so I thought I'd share it with you guys. I've had pretty good success with it. I don't really have many complaints, aside from the fact that you're really squishy, and if you don't get the timing right on like Renewed Focus or your Merciful Intervention to get away, it can get you killed pretty quickly. So that is it. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.
The Warhorn, the Whale of Fear, is one of your disables, and it's one of those things where you really want to keep it up until you know you're doing it. Like, you want to prevent the Guardian's Greatsword spin. I don't know what it's called. That projectile, that hurts quite a lot. So you want to